Hi, it's Dwyer. It is the morning of the Super Bowl. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, full disclosure, I bet against Pat Mahomes the last 2 years of the Super Bowl. Pat Mahomes, both games, was down in the game and came back and won it. Right? Mahomes is truly a Jordan type figure. What I want people to consider, and I'm not going to pick a side here, although I do believe Philly is the better team. What I want people to consider is that some techniques that have worked in past Super Bowls might not apply to this Super Bowl, right? We're trying to get an edge on the casino. First, let's point out that there are many out there. Steve Fezzik, famed gambler, is one of them, who expects Super Bowls to start slowly, right? The idea is that everyone is amped up. That first quarter, neither coach wants to be too aggressive. They don't want to fall behind. They can't trust their quarterbacks to throw the ball downfield because the quarterback might be too excited. Adrenaline is running a bit too high. Right? I'm going to back away from that here. These two teams played each other 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. You're dealing with repeat players here. Both quarterbacks have Super Bowl experience. Both of them. So, while there are some new guys who've never been to the Super Bowl, the cultures around the new guys are repeat players. Right? Nick Sirianni has coached in a Super Bowl before. So has Andy Reid. Let me also say, too, that people understand for whatever reason the Kansas City Chiefs start slowly in Super Bowls. So Philly has to feel, particularly since Philly was up big 2 years ago in a Super Bowl against Kansas City, they have to feel that they have a chance to start fast. Right? Let me also say, too, and I myself mentioned this in an earlier video, Vic Fangio is 0-8. 0-8 against Pat Mahomes in Mahomes' career. But Fangio is new to this. The Philly defense is high-powered right now. Guys like Jalen Carter will be playing, right? There was a question. He's in the lineup. Right? Philly, to me, is a situation that hasn't happened before for Vic Fangio. Maybe he's 0-8 against Pat Mahomes, but not with this defense. Let me make another point. That's going to sound ridiculous. Let the chips fall where they may. But the postseason's different than the regular season. Right? The regular season, the top dogs rule. I want to make the argument here, particularly for repeat players like this. They're going to stop the top dogs. I'm expecting Saquon Barkley, who's a home run hitter, as a running back. Right? He's not a guaranteed 4-yard per carry back. This is not Emmitt Smith. I'm not saying Smith is better. I'm just saying Smith was a different type of back than Saquon. Saquon is more of a 3-yard back, then he breaks off the 50-yard run. I believe Kansas City is going to be prepared for him. They're going to stop Batman here. So you need to, as a gambler, focus on Robin. You need to look at the teams and you need to just intuitively think Travis Kelce is going to get stopped. Are the others, Xavier Worthy, Kareem Hunt, are the others going to step up? DeAndre Hopkins. That's where I believe the value is. So, with that approach, here's what I want people to think about, particularly since Pat Mahomes, who is a Batman, clearly, who is alpha, is a guy who tends to dominate second halves. Right, folks? I expect Philly to come out ready to empty the gun in the first half. Understand, but for the fumble in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, Philly would have won that game, in my opinion. They were up big. They were dominating. And understand, they weren't as good then as they are now. So I'm expecting Philly to come out. I'm expecting Philly to be aggressive. This isn't a timid Super Bowl. Right? Again, this is Sirianni's second Super Bowl. I'm expecting them to come out and to be aggressive. Let's talk about the bets I think are the best bets on the board. I'll name one. Right? And I don't know who wins the game. But let's just say if Philly wins the game, given that down around the goal line, they don't give the ball to Saquon Barkley. They have a tush-push play. You saw it in the Washington Commander game, right? Where the Commanders kept jumping off sides when Philly was down around the goal line. And you notice Philly kept doing the tush-push. That's their meat and potatoes play to get in the end zone. Folks, because Philly expects the quarterback to score rushing touchdowns, and because Jalen Hurts had a great game, over 300 passing yards, when these two teams played each other in the Super Bowl before, wasn't that Steve Spagnuolo's defense before? To me, the most likely MVP, if Philly wins the game, right? And the game is taking place, let's be clear here, in an NFC stadium, right? Philly should be more familiar with the location than KC. To me, the most likely MVP, if Philly wins, is Jalen Hurts. Right? Not Saquon. Now, there is a possibility, because Philly's defense is so high-powered, and because, let's face it, Kansas City's offense isn't great. Kansas City is primarily a defensive team. There is the possibility that a defensive player wins the MVP. That possibility is greater in this Super Bowl than most, because Philly is an aggressive defense. Because, one can imagine Philly's aware of the pacing of the game. Pat Mahomes is going to try to take chances in the second half if Kansas City's down, because that's what he's done in prior Super Bowls. So there are going to be opportunities for, let's say, Philly DBs who are excellent, right? Or Philly pass rushers who have a shot on Pat Mahomes in the pocket to be hyper-aggressive. So the odds I've seen, understand, they downplay the possibility of a defensive player winning MVP, because defensive players don't typically win MVPs. We understand that. But this is that Super Bowl, that rare Super Bowl, where the teams know each other, because they played 2 years ago. right? This is that rare Super Bowl where if Philly gets to where they were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, if they're up with a lead, they're going to know to hold on to the football a little bit better, right? That fumble, in my opinion, really did cost them, right? Said the bitter gambler who had Philly in that game, right? They're also going to know, okay, Pat's going to open it up in the second half, right? They're going to know that. They're going to be prepared for that. So just understand, the way I see this game, the kind of plays I like are plays where MVP, Jalen Hurts, rushing touchdown. Does Jalen Hurts get one? I think the answer is yes. Right, again, down around the goal line, Philly knows Saquon's a home run hitting back. If you have Emmett, if you have Eric Dickerson, if you have Derrick Henry in the backfield, you give it to them down around the 1 yard line. I believe Jalen's going to keep the ball down around the 1 yard line. Right, so Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown? Yes. Jalen Hurts MVP? Yes. Again, I don't know who's going to win the game. I don't expect Jalen Hurts to win the MVP if Kansas City wins. Because, of course, you have Pat Mahomes, a marketable guy who's in every other commercial these days. Right? He would be the big story on the three-peat if Kansas City wins, assuming Pat Mahomes puts up Pat Mahomes, level performance. Especially if Pat Mahomes, as he's done multiple times, comes back from a double-digit deficit in the second half of a Super Bowl. Right? 49er game. Not last season, but the one with Jimmy Garoppolo. The first Super Bowl between these two teams. Pat Mahomes comes back from a double-digit deficit in the second half. Right? Let me also say, too, the secondary players on Kansas City. Right? The DeAndre Hopkinses. You'd be surprised how reasonable the props are on him. As I said, they're going to stop Travis Kelce, in my opinion. Right? Kelce's lost a step. I believe Vic Fangio understands that Kelce has been big in certain KC playoff games. Right? He's the obvious weapon you need to stop. Kelce in the playoffs is now up around Jerry Rice numbers in some categories. Right? I believe Vic Fangio is going to have them stop Travis Kelce. The key is that Mahomes is the kind of quarterback who can still win with Xavier Worthy. Right? With Pacheco. With Perrine. With DeAndre Hopkins. That's where the value lies in prop bets, in my opinion. Not with Travis Kelce. Right, so those are the bets I see. I think the game starts faster than most. 2 years ago, believe it or not, the Eagles came out and were throwing the football. Hence, Hurts had 300 passing yards. Right? I'm expecting Philly to start aggressively. I'm expecting Hurts to have a lot of numbers. For an example of what I'm talking about, look at his number of touchdowns against the Washington Commanders. That's Philly's last game. That was an NFC championship game. Look at Hurts' performance there. Philly's not going to run the ball into the line of scrimmage a lot. I'm expecting Saquon Barkley to be prioritized by Kansas City's defense. So I'm expecting the dominant guys, Kelce, future Hall of Famer, Saquon Barkley, 2,000-yard rusher, to be contained. right? Wide receivers. You know, I believe A.J. Brown is the best wide receiver in the game. He's now healthy. I'm expecting them to try to stop A.J. Brown. I'm expecting the Robin, Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith, to have a decent game. Right? Because Philly, let's just say they're going to have a game plan that's going to make adjustments for Steve Spagnuolo. Right? I'm not expecting A.J. Brown to have a Jerry Rice level performance. Right? Let me just say too, again, Pat Mahomes, folks, he's going to be under pressure in the second half. Right? I'm not expecting KC to come out and jump out to a lead. That's just not how they've rolled. Let's remember, last Super Bowl, they're down by 3. Before Kansas City's last drive in overtime. Right? They're only driving overtime. Right? Pat might throw a pick. Because again, different defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. A Philly team that is now ready to challenge Pat in the second half after Pat came back from a double-digit deficit in the second half 2 years ago. So that's the way I see it. Let me hear from you. This is your opportunity here to share with other subscribers your take on this game. Right? I'm staying away from a side, even though I think Philly's the better team. Because 2 years ago, I thought Philly was the better team, and Pat Mahomes is a model disruptor. Right? I tip my hat to Pat Mahomes. The problem to me is that Philly now has even more talent. The problem to me is that Mahomes' ability in the second half is now known. Steve Wilks lost his job as San Francisco defensive coordinator because of how he played against Pat Mahomes in that Super Bowl. Right? Just understand, Pat Mahomes, I'm sure, is a high priority since he's going for an unprecedented three-peat among defensive coordinators in the league. Vic Fangio, when I hear he's 0-8 against Pat Mahomes, that tells me he's seen a lot of Pat Mahomes. Right? Mahomes now, this is his 5th Super Bowl. We can now look at 4 prior games to find out how Mahomes has been so successful in the second half of Super Bowls. Right? Philly is not a timid team. They're not going to suddenly start trying to play, prevent defense in the second half. That's not the Vic Fangio brand. They're going to be bringing heat against Pat Mahomes in the second half. Right? When a team tries to be defensively aggressive, things happen. Either Mahomes is going to hit on home runs, and I'm expecting, if he does, it to be to people other than Travis Kelce. Or Mahomes is going to be forced to make quick decisions and is going to make mistakes, which could lead to turnovers. Right? Expect an aggressive Philly defense in the second half. And expect Philly to be offensively aggressive in the first half. They're going to have a 2,000-yard rusher in the backfield. I don't think he's going to be getting the ball that much. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Enjoy the game.